Welcome back, capital F football fans, to the O&O Sports YouTube channel. Today, we are going over our previews and predictions for Week 4 of the 2024 college football season. As always, be sure to like and subscribe, and just as a reminder, we have our $100 giveaway going for the season. Be sure to follow us on our social medias for a chance to win. And without further ado, let's jump right into some games to watch this weekend. Starting with Tulane at Louisiana. Now, this is going to be our group of 5 highlight matchup this week. These are two of the best programs at the G5 level going at it. And on paper, Louisiana is going to have the edge in this one. They've looked fantastic in both the rushing and passing attack and have defended both pretty well. But keep in mind, Tulane is coming off of 2 weeks against very solid opponents in Kansas State and Oklahoma, whereas Louisiana is coming off games against FCS Grambling and FBS newcomer Kennesaw State. So the stats won't show you the full story in this one. Next, we have NC State at 21st ranked Clemson. Clemson is coming off a good win over App State and a bye week. NC State is coming off a shaky win over La Tech, and NC State has been very disappointing to start the year, but they always seem to give Clemson a run for their money, so we won't count this one out, but Clemson should be the heavy favorite in this matchup. Next, we have Kansas at West Virginia. These are two teams who have struggled to start the year. Kansas, who has started out 1-2, hasn't been able to keep the ball in their own hands. And West Virginia, who has also started 1-2, has been thrashed in the passing game so far and has struggled in the turnover battle in their own right. This game is going to be an early must-win for both of these programs. The loser is going to be 1-3, facing an uphill battle the rest of the way, while the winner will be an even 2-2. A lot on the line here, surprisingly. Should be a sloppy game from both sides, but an even sloppy matchup will make for a pretty interesting game. Next, we have Rutgers at Virginia Tech, and after their Week 1 loss, Virginia Tech has been able to bounce back against Marshall and Old Dominion, and they've been pretty solid in those games. Kyron Drones has been able to heat up his arm and his legs. He's played an integral role in both facets of the offense, but the biggest thing in this one is going to be their rush defense. They've given up nearly 200 yards on the ground per game so far, and Rutgers is going to live and die on the ground this season, especially since they have Kyle Monangai, who is one of the best backs in the country. Not sure how well the Hokies will match up in this one. Next, we have Arizona State at Texas Tech. Tech had a big win over North Texas last week. That will hopefully turn the tide for the Red Raiders this year. They looked pretty bad in their 2 games before this one. And on the contrary, Arizona State has looked phenomenal to start the year. They have 3 solid wins to start 2024. The biggest question is which of these teams will be able to exploit the other's big weakness in this one. For Tech, that is stopping the run, and for State, that is stopping the pass. Both are more than capable of doing so we'll have to wait and see there. And following that, we have TCU at SMU, a battle of the acronyms. This one should be a pretty fun battle, but TCU should have the edge in this one. They've been very, very effective to start the year. Josh Hoover has been amazing so far. He's one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the country overall this year. He has been playing great, and SMU has not so far this year, but they have shown they do have the ability to punish you on the ground, something TCU has been able to contain this season, but should still make for an interesting dynamic in this one. We will be keeping an eye out there. And next we have Cal at Florida State. Now, in no other scenario would we be talking about a 3-0 team facing an 0-3 team, but when it's Florida State, we feel obligated to have our opinion heard. This is another game in which Florida State's biggest weaknesses should be on full display, and at this point we have to ask, do they have strengths? Cal's rushing attack should be the biggest factor in this one. They have Jaden Ott returning, but really it'll just be up to if Norvell sticks with DJ Uiagalelei. It seems like a no-brainer that he should be benched, but he stuck it out with DJ so far, so we'll have to wait and see there. Next, we have Northwestern at Washington. This one should be a blast. Northwestern is a team that's capable of shutting down the rush, which will put Will Rogers to the test. He's looked very good so far to start the year, and we think that this game is going to be won or lost by his arm. Northwestern is going to have a slow and steady approach, similarly to how they faced Duke earlier this year. They're not super effective offensively, but they'll be able to keep it close with their defense, which should make for a solid matchup. And last in our games to watch, we have Michigan State at Boston College. These are two teams that we were very low on coming into this year. I think we had both of these teams finishing 5-7 in our season previews, and they have just wildly outperformed our expectations so far. Boston College has been able to do so on a national scale due to their dynamic rushing attack and the play from their quarterback, Thomas Castellanos. He has looked amazing so far, but on the other hand, you have a Michigan State team who has put together 3 solid wins to start the season, and they're pretty similar to BC in that those wins came mostly from solid play on the ground, good play in the trenches, and good defense. We think the Eagles have the edge here, but it still should be a very interesting game to watch. We will be keeping our eye on this one. And moving on to our big impact matchups, starting with the game tonight. It is the 24th ranked Illinois Fighting Illini going to Nebraska to take on the 22nd ranked Cornhuskers. This is a big game for both schools. Both teams have started off 3-0, and for Illinois, you ought to be playing with a bit of a chip on your shoulder in this one. You started off the year in a very similar style to Nebraska and haven't received even half of the hype, and now is your time to steal it. Luke Altmaier has looked very solid at quarterback for them. They've maintained a very balanced attack early on offensively this year, and on defense, they've also been very balanced so far. No glaring holes on that side to be made aware of, and they've been able to generate turnovers at a very high clip. They're +6 to start the year. But on the other side, you have the rejuvenated Nebraska Cornhuskers. They have looked amazing to start the year, and they're led by their quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. Dylan Raiola, got a bit confused there. And he's led a similarly very balanced offense to over 30 points a game to start the year. Been very secure with the ball, haven't had any glaring weaknesses on defense. They're also in the plus column in the turnover battle, which should be a huge relief to Husker fans. But this is looking like a classic Big Ten matchup in the making, two very similar teams in make and model. And it'll be a matter of who can out-scheme the other. We think this game will be won and lost by the coaching staffs. We are very excited to watch it tonight. Next, on Saturday, we have the 11th ranked USC Trojans going to the Big House to take on the 18th ranked Michigan Wolverines. This is going to be quite the matchup. Both teams match up pretty well with each other on paper. We know Michigan's defense will show up for this one, and so will USC's offense. To us, it'll just be a matter of which team's weaker side of the ball will be more effective in this one. And for USC, we hesitate to call their defense weak. They've looked very solid to start the year. We would, however, call Michigan's offense definitely a weakness, specifically at the quarterback position. Davis Warren gets benched, and now it's up to Alex Orji to go out and beat a top 10 team in the Big Ten. That's a very critical development for the Wolverines and for the Trojans. As long as Miller Moss doesn't fall apart against a fairly elite Michigan defense, they should have no worries on that side. Next, we have the Arkansas Razorbacks taking on the Auburn Tigers. This is a pretty underrated SEC matchup coming into the week. Arkansas is going to be led by Taylon Green and that all-new Bobby Petrino offense that has looked amazing so far. Big capital Q question marks on that pass defense for them, but a surprisingly great rush defense to start the year. Remember, they faced Doak Walker Award winner Ollie Gordon and only gave up 50 yards on the ground against him. They've been a big surprise this year, and so has Auburn quarterback Hank Brown. He started against New Mexico after Peyton Thorne went out and laid an egg against Cal, and he had quite the day, nearly 250 pass yards and 4 touchdowns. But the Auburn offense is going to be run through Jarquez Hunter. He's averaged over 7.5 yards a carry with 3 touchdowns on the year. He has been great so far. Next, we have Georgia Tech at the 19th ranked Louisville Cardinals. And the Cardinals have quietly looked like one of the most complete ACC teams so far this season. The level of competition that you'd like to see in a prediction like this hasn't been there, but they've been dominant so far against relatively bad teams. They've had 4 running backs average over 5 yards a carry with 6 combined touchdowns amongst them. Their rushing attack has been very effective, layered well, and deep as an overall unit, and their quarterback Tyler Shuck has also looked great so far. No complaints at all for him or really for Louisville overall. And on the other side, you have the 3-1 Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, who have played 4 straight weeks, including week 0 to start the year, going into their 5th game. They've had a very good and balanced offensive approach so far. Haynes King has looked great so far. So has their lead rusher Jamal Haynes. And on defense, they've been able to hold their own against opponents, giving up under 100 rushing yards per game, but have struggled a good bit to stop the passing attack. Next, we have the 12th ranked Utah Utes going to Stillwater to take on the 14th ranked Oklahoma State Cowboys. And it's only week 4 of the college football season, and we have what should be one of the most important Big 12 matchups of the season. We are stoked for this one, and this should be yet another quarterback duel for the ages. Cam Rising has been phenomenal so far this season, missed last week with an injury, but he will be back for this one. And on the other side, Alan Bowman has come out and been very solid for the Cowboys. Ollie Gordon has surprisingly been very underwhelming for them, as has the rushing attack in general. But Bowman has been able to put his team on his back to an extent so far. He went out and won them the game against Arkansas 2 weeks ago and dominated against Tulsa last week. And if he can do it again, we may be talking about Oklahoma State in a whole new light next week. And last in our big impact matchups, we have Iowa at Minnesota, a truly classic Big Ten West matchup for the Floyd of Rosedale Trophy, the Big Bronze Pig. And last year, this game ended in controversy with the whole fair catch debacle. But this year, this matchup has slugfest written all over it. Both teams have looked like their usual selves so far. Max Brosmer has played pretty decently so far for Minnesota. Not spectacular by any means, but pretty efficient. And Darius Taylor has looked like the best back for them so far. He split reps with Marcus Major, but Taylor has averaged 7.5 yards per carry with 3 touchdowns on the ground, with an additional receiving touchdown. And for the Hawkeyes, as per usual, they will live and die in this one through their running back Caleb Johnson, their defense, and the field positioning game. Like we said, this has gut punch, slobber knocker, slugfest, Big Ten West game written all over it. And moving on to our game of the week, you voted on it, and for week 4, your capital G game of the week will be the 6th ranked Tennessee Volunteers going to Norman, Oklahoma to play the 15th ranked Oklahoma Sooners. This is a huge game this year, not only in the SEC but nationally as well. This game already has potential playoff implications on the line. For the Volunteers though, we have to talk about the running back room. Dylan Sampson has looked outstanding so far, nearly 8 yards per carry, 9 total touchdowns, just great work from him. And behind him, Tennessee has 3 more rushers over 100 total yards this year, including the quarterback Nico Iamaleava. He has looked phenomenal so far, should be worthy of at least some Heisman hype this season. That is just how great he has looked so far, and the defense likewise has looked elite. They've averaged only 160 yards of total offense allowed per game so far, and the Volunteers are looking very scary all around this year. And as for the Sooners, they have not looked nearly as scary. The offense has essentially been the Jackson Arnold show, which on one hand is great, and on the other hand is really not great. But they haven't been super effective on the ground other than what Arnold has been able to scrape away on his own, and that is a bit concerning when you're going against a team like Tennessee, who is already clicking so far this year. We'll need a few guys to step up in this one, and on defense, they should be well off. Have had some issues in pass coverage to start the year, but not too concerning in our eyes, and their rush defense has been pretty solid so far, which will be massive for them in this one. If they can contain the Tennessee running backs in this game, they will absolutely stand a fighting chance in this one. And for your players to watch in this one, it will be the quarterbacks. Like we said, it will be very important for the Sooners to find a way to limit Tennessee's rushing attack, because the best chance you have in this one is played mainly through the air. Both Arnold and Iamaleava are playmakers, and they will both need to be at their best if they want to win this one. And next, we have Upset Watch with good friend of the channel, Todd. Everybody say hello to Todd. No, really, he's waiting. Just say hello, please. Thank you. And first on Upset Watch with Todd, we have Kentucky taking on the Ohio Bobcats at home. Ohio's going to be a 19.5 point underdog, and Kentucky is coming off a game they should not have been in at all. It was a 1 point loss to Georgia, and because of that, they are going to be heavy favorites in this game. And this has potential trap game written all over it. They go to Ole Miss next week, and Ohio is a team that hasn't looked bad at all at the G5 level. They have a solid rushing attack and a pretty decent defense, but Todd isn't too convinced with our analysis. He has this game at a 2 out of 10. The Wildcats are in the cold range this week. And next we have Virginia going to South Carolina to take on the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers. Virginia looked bad last week against Maryland. They coughed up the ball 4 times and allowed the Terrapins to rush the ball pretty effectively against them, which is a big concern, seeing as the Chanticleers have been able to generate turnovers and rush the ball very well so far this season. Not at all the kind of matchup you want to see if you're the Cavaliers, and Todd agrees with us completely. He's going to have this game at a 10 out of 10. He thinks an upset is looming in Conway. And last, in Upset Watch, we have Kansas State taking on BYU on the road. BYU is a 6.5 point dog. And Kansas State has looked pretty great so far this year with Avery Johnson at quarterback, and him, DJ Giddens, and Dylan Edwards as their core rushing trio. But they've had one glaring hole so far. They've shown that the way to beat them is through the air, and that is really all BYU has. Jake Retzlaff has been pretty good to start the year. Not super efficient, but he's shown he can go out there and sling it. Not a great matchup for Kansas State, but Todd isn't too worried about this one. He has this one in the warm category at a 5 out of 10 to round out our week 4 upset watch. And moving on to our final segment, it is our big impact predictions. Starting with the game tonight, Illinois at Nebraska. Like we said before, these two teams match up really well, but one of these teams has looked a bit more efficient, a bit more talented, and a bit deeper than the other. And we think that team is the Cornhuskers. And we think they've really held back a lot of their ammo to start the year, whereas Illinois has had to empty a lot of it to get their wins over Kansas and Central Michigan, which is why we have Nebraska taking the W 27-17. Next, we have USC at Michigan, and Michigan has been a story of only one side so far to start this year. Alex Orji will have to come out and really look impressive for us to change our opinion on them this year, whereas USC has exceeded expectations so far, and we think their versatility on offense is what will give them the edge here. We have the Trojans winning this one 31-21. Next, we have Arkansas at Auburn, and unless Auburn can figure out how to run against this Arkansas defense, we think the game will come down to which quarterback can play better than the other, and in this case, we like Taylon Green. Any Bobby Petrino offense, they've shown they can put points up quick, and we just don't think Auburn matches up in terms of firepower in that aspect, which is why we have the Razorbacks taking this one 34-31. And after that, we have the ACC matchup, Georgia Tech at Louisville. And while we do like Georgia Tech a lot from what we've seen so far, we like Louisville just a little bit more in this one. They look like the more complete team in this matchup. Shuck has looked good, the running backs have looked great, and the defense hasn't really shown any weaknesses that we think Georgia Tech might be able to take advantage of to a meaningful extent. So in this game, we have the Cardinals going over the Yellow Jackets 30-21. And next we have Utah at Oklahoma State. This looks like it's shaping up to be a great battle between two Big 12 powerhouses. And we love Oklahoma State in this matchup if Ollie Gordon can churn out a 100-plus yard performance, but he has not been reliable enough for us to expect that from him this season. and Utah's defense has looked like the best unit of the 4 total units, not including special teams of course, that will take the field in this matchup. And as a plus, Cam Rising will be back, and we think he leads Utah to the win, 28-14. And on to the classic Big Ten West matchup, Iowa at Minnesota. We're excited to watch it, and typically in these types of matchups, you would kind of just expect Iowa to be the victor, but we like Minnesota overall a little bit more than we do Iowa this year. Iowa will be typical Iowa, but we think Minnesota will go out and play nearly or even just as good on defense and have a more dynamic unit on offense, which is the same thing that Iowa State did just a few weeks ago, and we think that will propel them to the victory at home, 14-13. And for your O&O Sports Capital G Game of the Week, Tennessee goes to Norman to take on the Oklahoma Sooners. We like Oklahoma. We like Jackson Arnold. We think they're a team under Brent Venables who will absolutely improve week by week and will have a great shot at the playoff looking in from outside. But we think Tennessee is a team that's in the area of getting a conference championship bid. They have looked very, very good all around: offense, defense, special teams, long snapper, scout team, you name it. And for that, we think Tennessee goes to Norman, and we think they beat the Sooners 35-21, with the Volunteers rolling all the way back to Rocky Top. And that's going to be it for our Week 4 preview. If you enjoyed it, as always, be sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the recap.